Hi everyone, it's Billy. We're just having some camera issues, so give me 2 seconds and we're going to see if we can get it to use a different camera source. Give me 2 seconds. And how do I... Chloe, you are being amazing in the background. Can you see how I can just change it to our external cameras, because it's not letting me change any settings in here on this? And sorry everyone for the delay. So Chloe, it's just not letting us edit what our video source is on this, unless... hang on, manage, we might have it. There we go, we've got that. And then let's see, why is that in there? That is still running off that. Okay, sorry, we've just set it up a bit different. So we're going to use this, and Bec, you'll have to sit with me. So sorry about that, everyone. We're just readjusting because we've got external cameras set up, but we just can't run it through this stream. Firstly, this is obviously Bec, who I'll formally introduce in a second, but I just wanted to firstly acknowledge the land that we are on, which is the country of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respect to any elders past, present and emerging. And tonight will be about hope and healing, which is a really important topic that I think a lot of us, I'm actively working on. And obviously a lot of the stuff I do in clinic. And very excitingly, we have another amazing external person coming, the only guest we've ever had, which is pretty exciting. So thank you, Rebecca Harris, for coming back. We realised that it was a very long time ago that you were our first and only guest that you've ever had on. For people that don't know Bec, I first met Bec, I think about a year ago, sorry, about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, when you were leading a wellbeing team at a little primary school with a lot of kids that had a pretty awful time, and you're doing beautiful work with them. And I learnt a lot off you. I've stolen a lot. I try and always remember to quote you when I talk about things like,
and I try to remember to quote you. And
one of your beautiful ones that I always use is, some kids need to be celebrated for how good they are at walking through doors. You told me that probably 10 years ago. So I think about it in clinic a lot. But Bec is also a therapist, which is an amazing duality. So you've spent all this time in schools at the coalface with a lot of kids and a lot of families, and done a lot of parent work. And now you sit in a clinic and do family work. And yeah, with little kids, older kids, parents. And it's really exceptional. You've also written a book.
Yes.
So we'll give you a plug within our socials and stuff like that. And Bec also goes and does stuff as part of Guiding Growing Minds with schools. And we hear amazing feedback about that from the educators that you go and work with. So thank you, Bec. Thanks for coming tonight. It's amazing, as always, to be with you.
Yes, lovely to be here.
Yeah, back here. We still get like a request for a guest every couple of days.
Yeah, I know.
So, people saying they'd be perfect guests, but your shoes are too big to fill. So we're going to start off, and we're going to have a plan of a conversation about hope and healing. And I will ask you some questions, and then we'll have a conversation, really relaxed. And then we will do 30 minutes of Q&A at the end, which you and I both love. I wonder if you wanted to first just maybe describe a little bit of what you do in clinic before we officially launch into hope and healing, what you do, your type of practice, because then you've got a beautiful way of framing all of that.
Yes, so I do spend some of my time counselling, and I see people across the lifespan, but I think because a lot of counsellors don't work with children, I do end up seeing lots of children, and love working with kids. And it's interesting just thinking about the way counselling often works, for me anyway, and my training is that even when I'm working with adults, we're working with their child selves a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I love about working with kids is you get access
in real time.
Yeah, and then
to
you're
the
like,
kid.
and you're 12, which
Yeah.
means you're not going to be coming back here when you're
Yeah,
30 with everything being, you know, much, much harder. But, you know,
That's such a cool way of thinking about it.
I always say I work, you know, I do work with lots of kids, but I like working with adults too because they also used to be kids.
Yeah. And I don't know about if you feel personally about this, but I feel like I'm still a kid in so many ways. Good ways and tough ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that point at which you think. I remember thinking when my oldest child started school, I guess maybe I'm an adult now.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it, to think about when you actually feel like you're a grown up.
Yeah, I'm like, surely I've got to be a grown up at this point.
And I guess, Bec, do you, just before we kick off into it officially, like, do you bring, I know you bring yourself to your work. Do you bring your childhood self to your work?
Yeah, I think it's impossible not to. And I think that's one of the interesting things that's, like, for me, often the difference between being a counsellor, psychotherapist rather than a psychologist. And I know there's lots of different people with different trainings, but it's very, it's non-pathologizing the way that I work, I think, and very much just that exploration of who are we in the room and what exists between us. And there's so much in that. Yeah,
it makes me think of that, that interpersonal kind of idea about we're all connected, aren't we? But as, you know, people that are sitting in a room trying to figure out stories, you know, it is a lot of it's connection, isn't it? I mean, we talk about that a lot on the podcast, and then, you know, you've got, you know, grown up kids now. I've got kids that are growing up and trying to connect with them. You know, it's very easy to lose sight of that being the priority, but
but there's something beautiful about counselling that is like parenting, that means in that sort of intimate space you catch something sometimes and you can say, what was that? Like, what's happening here? What are you feeling? Like, you know, it's a really...
And there's kind of this beautiful crossover of both of them come from this space of care when they work really well, I think.
And attunement as well, which is such a huge part of parenting when we, you know, can do it.
It's interesting because people, in case people don't know, haven't heard the word attunement, because it sounds like really technical, attunement. But attunement is, in my mind, and you tell me if you've got a better explanation of this, it's really trying to observe and understand what's going on for someone you're in space with. Do you know what I mean? Like me sitting here and going, Bec seems to be comfortable and feel safe and engaged, and, you know, and then constantly kind of being aware of that and being like, is Bec still cool? You know, and thinking about that is what we do with the kids that we meet, but also all of our relationships is a cool thing, because I think it's very easy to switch that off. Like I had, you know, 3 minutes with Heidi today where I was engaged with her and stuff, and I noticed I lost her when I checked my phone. She was like 100% with me. I was just doing the classic, like mirroring, making the same sounds, opening my mouth when she did. She was 100% with me, and I just glanced quickly over to check the time on my phone, and she was gone. You know, and that.
And it's definitely the kind of thing that is much harder when there's a lot of pressure on or a lot going on, which is why teaching is so hard too, because to be attuned to all the people, all the little nervous systems in the room with you is hard.
Yeah, totally. And I think that actually beautifully segues into hope and healing. And I wonder, I guess we had a lot of questions come in, and you saw them as well, from people that were interested in being a part of this before we started it tonight, about this idea of kids that have lost hope, kids that have a lot of negative self-talk, you know, kids might not be interested in going to school anymore, and kind of that hope being gone. I'll come to parents next, but I wonder if first we could maybe talk about the kids out there that are feeling hopeless and have been stuck in that hole for a while.
You really feel it, don't you, just talking about it? But I think there are multiple kind of ways to think about it and address it. And as always, we're dealing with thoughts and feelings and responses. We're dealing with interpersonal experiences. And I think when we think about what it is to be hopeful, it's future oriented, but without worry. Anxiety is future oriented as well, but it's worry, planning, feeling the need to control it. Whereas hope has something else there, curiosity, perhaps, wonder. I think cultivating hope involves the future, but it's dreaming and it's curiosity. And, I see that when working with young people who are really struggling and are really low. Like I feel like it's associated with that kind of low point.
Yeah. And that loss of, obviously, because I guess, how do you feel about, because obviously that idea, which I think is beautiful, of we want to get to a point where we're curious and we're thinking about the future and possibly even optimistic about it, or even just thinking about alternative potential futures. But, you and I would both meet lots of kids that can't conceptualize anything but the worst case scenario or a continuation of the current state that they're in, the current experience they're having, the constant anxiety or whatever it is. And I wonder how I'm sure that you don't sit there and go, be optimistic.
No.
I know I'm kind of being intentionally leading, because I think there is things out there that are like, we'll just tell the kid.
And I think that's really, like, there's a lot of good evidence around positive psychology. There's good evidence around gratitude and lots of that, and it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not enough, and it's not always the starting point. And I think working with kids who've experienced lots of trauma too, just saying, be more grateful. I've always had a bit of a rankling about that, even though there is good evidence and it is good.
Totally. You've been so good about it, because people, I didn't say at the start, your book is about trauma-informed practice in education. And so your research and your experience of how does that research land in the real world has a different starting point, doesn't it, than be grateful.
Yeah. And I think I think the way that we sort of explore has to be really gentle with kids in that state, because you can't just say, oh, come on. I think it's okay to challenge some thoughts, and it's important to be able to challenge things, to say, because our brains have a negativity bias. So we're always going to be focused on the negative. It's just actually how we're wired, which is protective, or was protective, not perhaps evolutionarily. We're too far ahead of where our brains are at still.
Yeah, that kind of anxiety kept us safe, and now it's, totally. And when do you feel like, because I'd love to know, Bec, and I've seen you do this, when do you feel like, what is your first point? Let's get to that first. What is the child that you're supporting in school or in clinic, or let's say in your own home, who is really stuck and hopeless and distraught? Can you talk to me about what your approaches are in it, probably across those settings? I imagine there's a lot of similarities.
Working with kids in clinic, so doing counselling, there are a few things that I often do with kids, and the focus generally, and I see, mostly adolescents would be my primary, unsurprisingly, is to find a way for them to feel some level of agency in the room. So always making sure that they know that they're in charge, I guess. But also, I might do things like, I'll always do like a genogram, a family tree. And you get lots of interesting information out of that. But it's also like, I know this stuff. Sometimes we'll do a life timeline, like, tell me about everything, tell me about all the things. And then you're checking in about a whole lot of points along the way, not just what's happening now. Strengths, I love doing strengths work. There's the positive psychology, but it is really good. And I think it's something really nice that families can do too. Something really lovely about looking collectively at your family strengths. And values, I think, is really important when we're thinking about hope too, because for kids to be able to identify, this is what I care about, and to be able to have those conversations where you say, like, what is it? What is it? Why do you care about it? Like, tell me more. How does it make you feel? What's going on there? And then you've kind of got a little thing to grab onto that's a starting point. And I think that sense of agency
it's such
really
a beautiful,
vital.
It's so funny because right before we hit record, you mentioned the word agency, and I was like, I wasn't going to talk about agency at all, but actually it's really trauma informed, isn't it? About, from a safety perspective, which is helpful for our 2-year-olds and our 20-year-olds, is that, you know, if they are hopeless, can we help them establish agency? And I wonder if you could talk to that more, what that looks like, because I think it is we could do an hour on how do you help kids, feel and actually have 2 important bits, not just feel like they have agency, but actually have agency, which really is about you have power, you have ability, you have control. You are not powerless. You have a say, you have a voice.
And it makes sense that it's related to feelings of hopelessness too, doesn't it? That that if you don't feel like you've got power or a voice, well then of course you've got a sense of hopelessness.
And there's an interesting thing as well, because you're taking me along with you on this. There's an idea of like, before you get agency in the future, conceptually in your mind, having agency in the moment. And I feel like, is that what you're talking about? Because you're talking about the genogram, and then they kind of go, hang on, no. And you're almost giving them a level of control and a level of like, ownership.
And also knowledge based, like you know stuff. And that sort of sense that you're the expert in yourself, you're the, you know a lot of stuff. And it's nice being in a position with a young person of like, well, I don't know about your family. You've got to tell me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think there's something too about the sort of embodiment of the way that we feel. And again, with our negativity bias, right? You have when you get in sort of habitual ways of thinking and experiencing things, you learn to pick up on it more quickly. So we know that if you, for example, experience a lot of anger from other people, you pick it up really fast on faces, whether it's there or not sometimes too. So we want to sort of retrain and check in. And often what I'll do with people, with adults as well actually, is when there is a sensation that I can see, like we call it resourcing. So building resources, internal resources. So it might be saying, for example, working with a young person who's grieving their grandparent. So to be able to, well, firstly, not shy away from the sadness, but to be able to then also say, tell me about them. And how did they make you feel? Because where there's grief, often when you're grieving a person, there's love. And then just to say, just stop for a minute, just feel that. Like feel that. And sometimes I'll do, if that feeling of being loved by Nana or whoever, if it had a colour, what colour would it be? If it, had a texture, what would it be? And we might do some visualizations about let it spread through your body and just feel it. And you can tap into that anytime. So the same with any kind of feelings. So
and do you do that with the hopeless kid? Like, whether it's you back in the primary school and you've got a kid who's been bullied, I'm never going to have friends here, I never want to be here again.
So you find the thing that does feel good.
Okay.
And that's what you spend time focusing on. Because, and kids even from quite young, I'll tell them what we're doing, what the purpose is, we're reminding your body, we're reminding your mind that all this is there too. And I think that's something about hope as well, is that can be a both and, that both things can be there. You can feel distressed or a bit lost or upset, but you can also feel hope. Like it doesn't need to.
That's a beautiful, like two things can be true. And I think it's helpful for people out there who might be listening to this that you, I wonder if you can describe, because I've seen it, that the way that you set up your school space to be this because I think a lot of schools have an always accessible wellbeing space, but I think for you, it was a great space, but it was also very relationship based, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like kids always had access to you.
Yeah.
And it was never like punishment. It was never like weakness. It was never, you know, which is your strengths-based stuff. But I wonder if you could speak to that, just in case there's people who are either working in schools or talking to schools about how to support their kids that might be stuck.
I loved doing that and having that set up. That was a space where it was really a regulation space, I guess, if you're going to call it anything, because it's whatever you're bringing. Like, we just work with it and investigate it and work at finding out what's going on. So it might be sometimes it was an invitation from a teacher to come.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe go see Bec. Just sometimes
cool?
It might have been an instruction, and sometimes it might be a request from a kid or a plan that we have every day. It's 9 o'clock because 9 o'clock is the toughest time for whatever reason, or maybe it's just after lunch is the toughest time for other reasons. But having that, sitting on little chairs, lots of sitting on little chairs, and being.
You're talking about you sitting on them.
That's right, together. And often a shared focus. But the relational stuff is beautiful, and I think when I finished up after a long time at the school, just remember this kid who was in grade 6, I'd known them since pre-prep, said to me something along the lines of, "You're the only one who ever knew," and it was something about their family. It was like, that my dad's actually my stepdad, something like that. And it was beautiful. I don't know that I was the only person who knew that, but they felt really seen, understood, and connected with. And I think that's the other thing too that's really important. Like, it's, as a parent in particular, it is horrible when your child feels really, really low. It's horrible. It's distressing. We don't want it to be true. But validating and acknowledging has to sort of be the starting point, doesn't it? Otherwise, you can't do that next thing where you are moving towards something else. I think being in that role at school and being a counsellor as well, I can get away with a lot more than parents can get away with, I think, in some of the things that we say. And naming things. But I think that for parents, so often the validation is just, it's got to come first, particularly when you're dealing with preteens and teens, that adolescent stuff. It's got to be acknowledged first, even when you don't want it to be true or you don't really get it.
Yeah, and I guess there's probably a step there that as parents we're the most vulnerable to, of not acknowledging that feeling in ourselves, of like, this is awful to think about my child struggling this much and what this means for me. Taking me back to my own childhood, my own failure. I haven't protected them enough. I haven't made them strong enough or resilient enough, or, how am I going to repair this? All of those feelings, and trying not to bury them in the moment and say they don't exist, because I've got to be practical now, and I've got to.
And I think you can pull apart too. Like, when you're in a moment having a conversation about something that's tough, you don't need to also be trying to bring in solutions. Like, you can just be present in that moment, but then you might be thinking at dinner the next night, let's all do the strengths thing and find out what our strengths are, or let's talk about, God, how good was that holiday that we had last year, or you're trying to bring in the things that might offer hope. Or you might be saying, when I was a kid, I always thought I would do this as a job, and now I'm doing this. Well, I wonder what are you going to do? I wonder.
The possibility that's there. And I wonder, Bec, do you think about trying to bring opportunities to see hope pay off into the shorter term for people? Like, I guess what I'm thinking about there is a lot of it is like longer term, things won't always be this bad. That kind of idea of cognitive restructuring is often very far reaching.
I know.
And I wonder, because I know you've got a plethora of approaches that you use outside of CBT, and I wonder how you do that in a shorter term. With a kid who's a bit stuck, how do you think about shorter term gains and opportunities to succeed and hope?
It's interesting, I've been working with a young person who hadn't been attending school and lots of anxiety and lots of sort of, understandable reasons why. And I just had total hope, faith, trust that we would get there. And the young person did not. And we had this conversation once where it was sort of, they said the right things. I was like, blah, 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 yeah. And then I said, do you believe that? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I do. And I'm just going to hold that for you for a bit. How about that? How about you don't have to tell me that you trust it's going to happen, but I do. So I've got that for both of us. So you can kind of hold it a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually very long before they were at school too. Was it, they did an amazing, brave, brilliant job. It wasn't long in my mind. So the other thing that, I did for them was to keep looking at what progress looks like. So for them, they might do something and think, oh, and I couldn't even get to school. And I'd say, hey, you had your uniform on and you walked all the way to school. Like, that's worth celebrating. So the long-term aim is, often when I talk to kids, I just want to be a normal kid. And so school stuff is often big there. But, I just want to be going to school every day. Let's say that's the long-term aim, and it feels so far away.
Do you know what you make me think of? There's this stuff around like helper skills and qualities in the relational practice space, and it talks about quiet enthusiasm, about how important that is.
Yes.
And if I'm like, Bec, you're going to be amazing. You'll be back at school. You'll be the school captain by the end of the year. You'll be the fastest kid. You'll be the smartest kid. You know what I mean? You're like, I'm not sure I believe you. But if I'm like, Bec, I think, we're going to keep working together and figure this out. But I'm actually pretty confident. It's this beautiful thing about like, actually, I am genuinely confident and optimistic and hopeful. And just because I'm talking so much, can we just, my team are pinging me because we're getting to this. Can you just talk maybe before we go into the question time, just because a lot of people spoke about from the parent perspective. And I wonder just before we get into questions.
I think that people were sort of talking about parents, like what it is to be a parent who might be carrying some pain or struggles, or maybe some sense of their own hopelessness or worry about healing. And I think, there were some interesting sort of comments around that. I think it's never too late to break a cycle. The thing about healing is that we do it for ourselves, right? Other people don't heal us, we heal ourselves. And often what happens for parents is when your child becomes the age you were when you experience something, you realise how small they are. And it can really bring up a lot of triggers. And I think there's something, again, agency is a bit of a theme, because that feeling like a victim can be really, that can hang around for a long time.
Which is beautiful, because it just happened to me. And it goes back to your point before about being aware of that, that experience that you're having, and being like, that's where that's coming from. But you can actually break that. You can, like, obviously for my kids, but for myself, it's a beautiful thing. That you've just given me in the moment, to be honest. But it's, so I think, because you would know this as well, Bec, but sometimes the hardest things for us that work with families is convincing a parent to prioritize their own mental health. And it's, and the idea that I hear a lot is, I'll be fine when my kid's fine.
No.
Which unfortunately, we've never seen that happen, have we? You never see the parent that's distraught and then the kid suddenly is better and the parent goes, cool, now I'll be fine. It's, and I actually don't really like the analogy of put your own oxygen mask on first kind of thing, because I think there are these micro moments throughout the day of like, how do I think about my own needs? How do I think about my own feelings when something happens that triggers me?
It's absolutely the micro moments. I think that is really helpful. Sometimes, like when I'm with teachers or parents, I talk about the sacred pause. It's just the moment. It's like, when you give yourself 15 seconds, just 15, you can do it. And just like supporting your own regulation. I think with parents too, it's really important to talk about that, the idea of meaning making. Like, we don't have to have good stories. Our stories don't need to be all roses and full of love and shiny. They need to make sense. And that's what the evidence says for kids. The parents' cohesive self-narrative is a huge indicator of a child's well-being.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying there is, it's not I had this perfect childhood. It's I had adversity because of my parents' mental illness, because of the financial strain they were under, because of their own childhood. And then that's impacted my journey.
Yeah.
But I've done all this work to think about. Is that what you mean about meaning, as opposed to it was perfect? And
yeah, it just is, these things happened and here I am now with you. But often it does require counselling or something to sort out the meaning making, so that it does make sense. And I think if that, like, what a great motivation that is, to go and
to
do your own work, to make sense, so that it supports your children. And it's the same with hope and for our kids, to help things make sense for them. Because moving through the world when things don't make sense, it does not feel good.
Yeah.
So trying to put things in place, but trying to convince parents is really hard. And that's I think back to when I was 29 and had my second kid, and there was a baby bonus thing. You got $1,000 when you had a kid, and I was just like, right. I went to therapy. I was like, that cost $100 a session. Then I've got 10 sessions. I know. I need everything sorted. To be fair to that therapist, she did a very good job in 10 sessions. But the motivation was like, the age my older child was and what that was bringing up for me, and just being like, and now I've got this little baby and I really have got to sort some stuff out. Yeah,
gosh, it brings it up, doesn't it, even in a short space of time. Okay, now I've got the questions are coming. So, okay. This is a good one, because I think you've given me an answer to this in the past, actually, just sitting next to you and talking about this stuff. I have an explosive mum who would shut down in order to cope. I worry my calmness with my kids is actually shutting down again. How can I know? How can I know, and does it matter?
Yeah. So the first thing that makes me think of, and I wonder if it's the thing that I've said to you before, is the great Dan Hughes quote, "Meet the energy, not the emotion."
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, I love that idea that to help to co-regulate. Sometimes it's not us just being calm, because calm and regulated aren't the same thing. We think they are, right? And that's maybe part of the answer too. Regulated is connected. Regulated is I feel connected to myself. And when I'm connected to myself, I can feel connected to you. If I'm not connected to myself, we've got no chance.
And so it's actually great helping me learn more about this. What you're saying is that you can be connected to yourself and not calm, zen, monk-like.
Because you might be totally excited, or you might be feeling kind of low. But if you're connected and you know how you feel, so that's part of the answer, I guess, is how do you know? Do you feel connected to yourself? Do you feel as though, do you feel a little bit like you're a bit outside your body, or do you feel like you're in there?
Yeah.
Or whatever it feels like to you. And then the energy and emotion thing is when kids are high, for us to go high, like angry would be a good example. So if a kid's really angry, and you can, without feeling angry yourself, say, I can see you're really angry, and then you've got them, and then you can slowly bring them down and they come down with you, or up-regulating if we're talking about that. I love that. That just was like a light bulb moment when I first heard that.
It's interesting because, I think I do that particularly with Yvette, my 4-year-old, because she'll be really angry and fight up, but I go in with energy, but it's a playful energy, and it's not distracted.
Yes.
It's, hey, I can see the tough time you're having.
Yeah.
But it's not, because I think all of us know how infuriating it can be when someone just comes in and is like, take a few deep breaths.
Yeah.
And you're like,
no,
this is not, you're not matching me.
I think that idea of like, we think about calm all the time. We talk about calm as though that's regulated, but regulated is safety and in connection.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful because that heightened excitability can actually be really connected with
Yeah.
the experience you're having as well.
Yeah.
Beautiful. They're coming in quickly. Question 2, here, beautiful question. How do you actually know if you're healing from something? How do you heal when the people who hurt you were your own parents?
I think how do you know if you're healing is when the past doesn't hurt you in the present. And I think that's a lot of the work that we do in counselling, right, is bring a now thing and we see how it's connected back here.
Yeah.
Because the now things are often in a pattern that relates to back then. So I think as healing happens, the past stays in the past. It doesn't go away. You don't forget it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt you in the same way. You don't suffer with it. You might feel sad for your little self.
Yeah. And are you healing if it's getting less damaging? I guess what I'm talking about is like, there's a lot of kids that we meet in clinic or parents that, had really awful childhoods and it's getting easier, but it's still tough.
Yeah.
And I guess they're on a healing journey, aren't they? So maybe which I think is a beautiful way of thinking about it. You've gotten to that healing point where it doesn't harm you anymore.
And I think that's the thing about healing. It's not over really ever. Like we're always on a journey. There's other things. And I think when it's your parents who hurt you, that is tough. It's really tough. And I think it impacts you relationally and it impacts all your future relationships until you've really done the healing. It can anyway. It doesn't necessarily, I guess, but it can. But what an opportunity, and this might be me being overly hopeful, I don't know, to be the parent you wished you had. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. I often, for adult clients, get them to write letters. I love a good letter, right? And to be who you are now, writing to your younger self can be an incredibly healing and cathartic thing, because what you're saying is, and like I said before, like we heal ourselves. If your parents have harmed you and they're not going to fix it, it's very unlikely that they will be the ones to do the healing. But you can be your adult self saying to your little self, I got you, I see you, that wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And it, when we do it in sessions, it can be just incredibly moving to be able to do that. And I've done that both as the client and as the therapist, to do that work, to say, and sometimes it's even visualizing, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to scoop you up and get you out. And that is amazing. Sometimes people come up with it themselves, actually, when we're visiting, revisiting
for
stuff.
anyone who hasn't done that and relates to that, it is a very emotional experience, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
To do visualization practice in terms of saving your child self is pretty full on.
Yeah, it is. But I think that's the thing about, the being who you are now. And, I think we would probably both be in agreement that the difficult early experiences, like, that make us who we are. It's why we do the work we do. It's certainly, it's hard to look back and say, I wish that had never happened for me, because it's made me who I am and I like who I am.
Yeah, I think you're in a healthier space than I am. I'm still in that.
I've got a few years on you, so
I'm still in there. I would go back and change it. But the beautiful. I'm almost going to ask you something else, but I won't, because I'll save it for another time, about your future self, writing a letter to yourself now. The concept.
Oh yeah, I've done that. I love that too.
You taught me about it. Okay, next one. I've got students who laugh things off, but I know that they're hurting. How do I help them see hope in themselves? Beautiful question about these shields and false, masks that these kids put on.
Yeah. And masking is, like what happens with neurodivergent kids, but it happens with other kids as well, and particularly hiding pain or challenging things. And I think what I say to teachers more than anything else is your best, like one of your relationships are such a powerful thing, but modeling, like to be able to name things yourself as a point of connection to be able to identify when you're doing things, to be able to name it in the moment so that all your students can see that firstly you can name when something's happening, if it's in the moment, or you might be reflecting, so that you, perhaps if that's something you notice, you might tell a personal story yourself about something similar, and you can say how it feels in your body. I think the sensation stuff is really important too when we're thinking about any of this stuff, but the feelings, like what does it feel like in your body?
Yeah, because I guess it takes a lot, doesn't it, to sit that team down and say, mate, I think you're not fine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Which you possibly can get to with some of these kids. Like I have that happen occasionally in clinic when I've developed a trusting relationship with them. But
and sometimes teachers will be able to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's some amazing modeling that teachers can do when they can say, you know, oh, I feel, if it's in the moment, I feel a bit like I think I just let something go, but actually something inside me is telling me that I shouldn't have let it go because it actually didn't feel okay. So I'm going to just go back a little bit and I'm going to say that didn't feel okay to me, or something like that.
It's a hard thing to do though, isn't it? But it is, even like with families, saying that I got annoyed, like, or do you know what I mean? Or like with kids in clinic, like I'm getting frustrated, like, and the beautiful thing that I do with my kids is that I will then come back and like say sorry and be like, that this is why that happened, and it's really important I say sorry to you about that, and like I didn't grow up hearing it.
The repair is so powerful,
and a repair from an educator is phenomenal, I think.
Oh my God, yes.
Because it takes me back to another helper quality that we talk about in relational practice of self-disclosure.
Yeah.
And I go way too far the other way, but I don't like the idea of like, no, I'm not a real person anymore. I'm just a professional that's around the kid and I've got a role, and you will call me this name, and once I step out of this building, I will be myself.
Because it's actually your life experience that makes you a better clinician.
Yeah, so, or an educator, or a parent,
whatever. That's right. Yeah. But I think there's so much that adults in children's lives can do, particularly around, because we know this now, the sensation and the emotion are so intricately linked that often we will have a sensation before we know what the emotion is. You know, you might have that feeling where you're like, oh, something doesn't feel good. What is it? And then you realize what it is.
Yeah.
So it's actually the sensation comes, and the more any adults can do that, where they can say, maybe with frustration, you can probably tell by my face and my voice that I'm frustrated. And then you're saying, these are the indicators. And so when it happens, when your voice goes up, you probably know that you're frustrated, or, you know, it's just teaching that emotional literacy.
And also the narrative component of that as well, of how do you build narratives into play, and, you know, all of that you don't even have to be the only one role modeling it, but saying, what do you think's going on for this person?
Exactly. And I often say to parents too, of teenagers generally, watch their show with them, watch their dumb show with them, and talk. Because, you know, when you're talking about whatever is you're watching, it's so much safer than talking about what's happening for the person, but often that is what will come out.
Yeah, there's so much amazing content in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like, so yes, beautiful. Okay, I think I'm a couple behind. This next question: recovery from school-based and developmental trauma, strategies for getting back to school. 8-year-old, parental loss and bullying, and hasn't been to school in almost 2 years. So yeah, I mean, we've done this content a lot, but I'd love to hear your take on this. That obviously isn't. There's a time point where you have to cross that line of walking through that school, sitting down in the classroom, and being back participating in class.
Oh, it's tough.
Such a weird goal to set, but which is because we know all of the school data shows a sense of belonging in that community is what we're actually aiming for, not test results or percentage of attendance. But what do you think about like severe parental loss, bullying, out for 2 years, or meet a kid in clinic every week that's like this? How do you approach that?
It's it's really complex, and I don't think there's a single answer.
No, of
really.
course not. But yeah, I mean, I think some of the things you've already touched on are like validating the experience that's happening. What does small acts of hope look like?
Yeah.
What does optimism feel like?
But also, what's the goal? What is the goal for the young person or the child? I mean, that's young.
And if we go back to your goal before of I want to be a normal kid,
Yeah.
I guess without putting words in your mouth, there are ways kids can start feeling like that before they're back in the school environment, aren't there?
And I think, like, depending on the situation too, but with the person I was referencing before, it was kind of titrating the experience. So little by little, they would walk to school at school time and go home for ages. Then, there were a few little things, which is exposure therapy basically.
Yeah.
And that's anxiety, that's school anxiety, which, or school can't, different ways that we talk about it, but that was very anxiety specific. So exposure therapy is generally how we deal with it. But we were also in therapy talking about where the origins of some of the struggles were at the same time. So working in the here and now, and we're working in the past a little bit, and validating and saying, well, of course you would feel like that.
Yeah.
Of course, because this bad stuff happened.
Yeah.
And also and depending on the age too, but really acknowledging schools, they're tricky places.
Yeah.
And when things like bullying happen, we need to acknowledge that the system is not a great one. It's not a great one for a lot of kids. And I think it's really validating for children to hear adults say that. The system isn't great.
I don't know, like I just see bullying as a symptom of a school that isn't supported enough, and doesn't have the resources to proactively, set up structures. And I think there's another thing as well, Bec, that I'd love to hear you talk about in this question of relationships that bridge that gap between not being at school at all and being there successfully, and how they can actually start before you're back in that environment. Yeah,
it's so interesting. Just some of the dealings I have with school now that I'm out of a school, because I know what to say. But what I've heard a bit recently, which is upsetting, is schools, and I know that there's often pressure on about attendance and things, is that schools are just like, well, this obviously isn't the place for them. But what I've seen work really well is, what works the best is no pressure, right? Reducing the pressure. And that's feedback I get from kids as well. It was like, thank you for telling my mum to stop saying she wished I was going to school, or for being too enthusiastic when I managed to get through the gate. Yeah. But things like, don't come to school, but your English teacher wants to see you before school. You can get out before the bell goes. Things like that have been really successful. Come in the middle of the day and just meet with the wellbeing person. So it's like, what's tolerable? Yeah. Acknowledging it'll feel uncomfortable or difficult, but we don't want our kids in distress, but discomfort is okay.
Which is an interesting, I think, compliment to what you were saying about no pressure, because I think it's easy to say no pressure with toilet training or meal times, or, pressure makes it worse. But I imagine there'll be a lot of parents out there that really feel stuck, and they're like, I'm not putting any pressure on, and this kid hasn't been in school for 2 years.
So then you think about, what is the tiny thing that we can agree is okay? Driving past the school at school time. Yeah. And I know this stuff is not. Yeah. You are playing the long game, and that's with hope as well, isn't it? Hope is always the long game. It's not, like you said, often we're talking about things that are far in the future. So we've got to find the tiny thing that is, we drove past when the bell was going. Yeah. Cool. But we're also not going to make such a big deal about it, but we did it. Cool. Okay.
And I think also the things I think about is, how do you succeed with peer relationships? Because school's probably going to be the last place that you'll feel safe again in a peer relationship.
And that's the thing, when schools say maybe this isn't the right place for them, if the child has a friend there, it's the right place, because you don't have to go to a school and have to make all new friends. So that titrating thing might be walking to school with the friend that you've got.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a beautiful example. Let me see, how am I going? We've got a couple more minutes. So we're going to be, we're going to be posting more stuff about this on Patreon. So thank you to everyone who supports us on that. You're all amazing, and we want to be doing more and more to support you. Let's just look quickly. We've only got a couple more minutes, but where I think this one is how can I let go of my guilt about my untreated
postnatal depression.
Oh, postnatal depression and anxiety. Sorry, postnatal depression and anxiety during my child's early years and its potential impact on them. God, that's
a bit of a personal one too. Like relatable. It's bloody hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. But one of the things that's helped me as, working with kids in really, really rough circumstances and being a parent who has not been able to be a perfect parent is, maybe this won't work for everyone, but our kids and all kids, they're on their own journey. And it's not necessarily our role to say, and it's harder when you're a parent, I suppose. It's my job to make your life the best it can be. It's our job to walk alongside our children and to be the best that we can be.
Yeah.
But life happens as well. And I think, again, on that topic of hope and hopelessness and healing, life happens and it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And stuff does happen. And I think we can, as our kids get older, we can talk to them honestly about things that are hard, including our own mental health journeys, without it being guilt-laden necessarily. It's just honest. But letting go of parental guilt is incredibly hard, and the more help you can get with it, the better, I think.
Is there something as well, Bec? I'd love to hear just your thoughts on, actually, I've done a really amazing job of battling that and coming through with this kid. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of, there's a lens on postnatal depression that is very self-shaming, I think, about as if there was a choice in it. Or I should have tried harder. I should have just got myself up and smiled and interacted with this kid more. But actually,
that's right. So
you've come through debilitating mental illness,
And the self-compassion stuff is so important. And I think that question of, what would you say if it was your sister?
Yeah.
What would you say if it was your best friend? We have to sometimes use those strategies to be kind to ourselves. And they can be really effective too.
And the attachment research well, but the researchers in both of us probably says that kid's fate is not, and your relationship with them is not set in stone.
It's not because we know about earned secure attachment. And if you're getting cracking on that in their childhood, amazing.
If you're turning a parenting thing, like you and I would meet families that are amazing and working really hard to rebuild attachment and relationships that don't have the capacity to come to something like this.
Well, that's right, because lots of us need to do it with therapists or in our relationships as adults. So if you're doing it when they're little, amazing. But it is a really tough one.
And let me see, I think there is one more. I know we're out of time, but just to do service to this one. Very quickly, 18-year-old anxious ADHD son teased for being fat as a tween, now obsessed with weight, disordered eating and upset by weight gain. How do we separate worth from weight?
I feel like I've gotten a bit of a theme of disordered eating with clients lately, and it's a really hard one to talk about. Kids often will shut down and not talk about it. It's so, I don't know if you find that too. Like, it's one of the hardest things for kids to talk to their parents about. So
Well, there's this cultural pressure that just pins them so hard, I think. And it's interesting though, because I think goes back to what you started talking about with what is like healthy feel like, what does your body feel like, and having that positive relationship with your body, I think is something we don't actually talk about. If you think about it, we don't talk about emotions and what they feel like, and our tummies and all that stuff.
And safety. What does safety feel like?
What does safety feel like? But we also just don't talk about like what does a healthy body feel like? in terms of rested. And, we think about a healthy body as thin or muscular or whatever, but we are not connected to what an actual healthy body is,
And it's so just linked in with that's why the teen bullying stuff is so hard too, because they're so wired to connect to peers and to value peers, that when the peers are sending that at you, it's really, really hard. But it's, I guess, that building of the rest of you. Like, who is the rest of you? What are the things that you care about? What are the things? And I think, doing things actively in your community, whatever that means, is so powerful too. That gives you that sense of agency, especially when it's linked to values. So if you're really clear about what you value, and again, you can use that strategy with kids too. Like, what would you say to your friend if it was them? And what is important to you? What is important to you? And are the choices you're making getting you closer to that or further away from that? And I think that can be really helpful around that age too. Around 18, kids they know stuff. They know themselves. So to be able to say, actually, what I value is authenticity or honesty or kindness, is doing that, having, I guess, behaviors that might be harming yourself, moving you closer to those things, or is it moving you further away? Without judgment, we're just asking.
The idea of, does this serve me? Does this serve my well-being?
And what I care deeply about. So it's not even, it's almost like you're taking it a little bit outside of yourself, which I think, that idea of, I think that's really helpful too, that idea of being the witness or the observer, like taking the step back. And I think as parents, we can do that as well, to be, I read a beautiful quote recently that was like, when you put that separation, so for example, where you might feel like, you might say, instead of I am sad, you say I feel sad, or part of me feels sad. You're stepping further and further away from it. And I read this beautiful quote that was something along the lines of like, not like to be the one who compassionately holds the pain. It's so beautiful. So how do you find that part of you that is deeply compassionate toward yourself? It takes a bit of practice, I think.
Definitely, but it is a beautiful way to end out the session, but also that idea of that last one, because I think it's something we need to cover on the podcast more. Bec, you are amazing. And what I have to say, we'll be posting some additional replies on Patreon next week, as we've had so many beautiful questions that we haven't been able to get to. I hope people have enjoyed that. And Bec, people are saying how calming you are. You calm me. People won't be surprised to hear that, I benefit a lot from your friendship and your guidance. You also beautifully made all these delicious meals for us when our third was...
There's actually some brownies in your freezer too. Just
amazing. So, like everything on PCP, nothing's performative. it's all genuine. So we're very lucky to have Bec in the Guiding Growing Minds community, and wonderful to have you back, Bec. And some nice messages coming through. Please let us know on Patreon what you thought. There'll be feedback stuff coming through. We really appreciate all of you being a part of that community. It personally keeps me going, and I know the rest of the team. And Bec, for kindly giving us your evening to share your wisdom so beautifully with us.
Absolutely believe in it.
So it's amazing. And if people are keen, I'm sure we can convince Bec to do more. But definitely, if schools are keen, reach out, because Bec is amazing, and we get phenomenal feedback about Bec from the schools she goes out to. So,
Safe to Learn is the name of my book.
Yes, Safe to Learn. It's over there on my desk. I should have had it here.
Embedding trauma-informed student wellbeing practices.
Yes, and are you Rebecca Harris on that?
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
It's my grown-up name.
Rebecca Harris. I know I don't use my grown-up name.
And Embedding Wellbeing is,
Embedding Wellbeing is the socials and the website. Yes, Embedding Wellbeing socials and website. And then, we'll put up some more information in the Patreon about the book, because the book's phenomenal. So thank you, everyone. And anyone rewatching this afterwards, thank you for being a part of the community as well. And thank you for all the Guiding Growing Minds team in the background. Thanks, everyone. Bye.